So now we are going to move from just doing conversions to actually doing some calculations with percent. The first type of calculation we're going to look at is how to find a percentage of an amount. So the easiest way to do this is whenever you have a percent, convert it to a decimal by dividing by 100 and then multiply it to find the percentage. So some examples we can look at are 30% of 40. So I take the 30% and convert it to a decimal by dividing by 100 or moving the decimal back 2 places, and then I'm going to multiply. So this becomes 0.30 times 40 to give me 12 when I put it into my calculator. 5% of 100 is 0.05 when I take the percent and convert it to a decimal, multiply by 100, and I get 5. 25% of 80 is 0.25 times 80 to get 20. 3% of 40, I take the 3%, change it to a decimal, so move the decimal back 2 places to get 0.03 times 40, so the answer is 1.2. 105% of 80, 105% converted to a decimal is 1.05, move it back 2 places, multiply by 80 to get the answer of 84. And finally, 50% of 80 is 0.50 times 80 equals 40. And don't forget that 50% really represents half. And in this case, half of 80 is 40. So it's a quick way to kind of check that our answer is right. Another way we can do these types of calculations is to set up a proportion. Remember, a proportion is two ratios that are equal to each other. And a ratio is the same thing as a fraction. So if I want to do 22% of 110, well, 22% is 22 out of 100. And I'm looking for, well, what number is that out of 110? So I'm really missing the top number here. 22% is something out of 110. I don't have a way of really dealing with the question mark. So what I do is I assign a variable, something to hold its place and something that I can work with in order to solve. So 22 over 100 is x over 110. Now I can cross multiply. 100 times x equals 22 times 110. So 100x equals 2,420. I'm not trying to solve for 100x, I'm trying to isolate x. So I'm going to divide both sides by 100 in order to get the x by itself. And when I do that, I end up with x is equal to 24.2. 100 divided by 100 is 1. 2,420 divided by 100 is 24.2. So therefore, 22% of 110 is 24.2. Another example, calculate 105% of 40. So 105 is a percentage. So 105 over 100 is some number over 40. I use x as the variable to hold the place for what I'm looking for. So 105 over 100 is x over 40. I cross multiply 100 times x, 105 times 40. So 100x equals 4,200. I'm trying to isolate x in this equation, so I'm going to divide both sides by 100. And when I do that, I get x is equal to 42. So therefore, 105% of 40 is 42. Now this method does seem a lot longer than the method we used up top where we just converted to a decimal and then multiply. But this idea of setting up a proportion and cross multiplying is going to be extremely important both in some examples we're going to look at next and in other units we're going to do. So it's never a bad idea to think about how we can do it using proportions.